Michael Hartwell was not a man who often took breaks. As the CEO of one of the most successful tech companies in the city, his days were packed with meetings, phone calls, and endless emails. But today felt different. For reasons he couldn't quite explain, Michael decided to step away from his office during lunchtime. He needed fresh air, a moment of peace amidst the chaos of his life. So he walked out of the towering glass building that housed his company and headed towards Central Park. The park was alive with the colors of autumn. Golden leaves carpeted the ground, and the crisp breeze carried the faint scent of fallen foliage. Michael strolled along the winding paths, his hands tucked into the pockets of his tailored coat. His mind wandered, replaying snippets of conversations from earlier that morning. Work had been stressful lately, but for once he wasn't thinking about profit margins or quarterly reports. Instead, he let himself enjoy the quiet rhythm of nature around him. As he rounded a corner near a small fountain, something unusual caught his attention. Two children, twins judging by their matching outfits, were playing near the water's edge. Their laughter rang out like music, cutting through the serene atmosphere of the park. At first glance, they seemed like any other kids enjoying a day outdoors. But as Michael paused to watch them, he felt an odd sensation creeping over him. There was something about these children that made his heart skip a beat. They were about 6 or 7 years old, with messy brown hair that stuck out in every direction. One of them, a girl, was crouched down, trying to scoop water into her cupped hands while her brother splashed her playfully. Both of them had bright hazel eyes that sparkled with mischief and joy. And those eyes, they looked so familiar. Too familiar. Michael blinked, shaking his head slightly. It couldn't be possible. Surely it was just a coincidence. People often said that everyone had a doppelganger somewhere in the world. These kids probably belonged to someone else, someone who happened to share his facial features. Still, the resemblance was uncanny and it gnawed at him. Curiosity got the better of him. He stood there for a moment longer, unable to tear his gaze away. Then, as if drawn by some invisible force, the children ran toward a nearby bench where a woman sat watching them. She smiled warmly as they approached, ruffling their hair affectionately. That's when Michael's breath hitched in his throat. He recognized her instantly. It was Emily, his ex-wife. Time seemed to freeze. Memories flooded back like a tidal wave, overwhelming him. Emily had been such a huge part of his life once upon a time. They'd met in college, young and full of dreams. Back then they were inseparable, sharing late-night conversations and lazy Sunday mornings. They even talked about starting a family together someday. But life had other plans. Over time, their relationship grew strained. Arguments became frequent, and the love they once shared turned into resentment. Eventually they parted ways, signing divorce papers and going their separate directions. Michael hadn't seen or heard from Emily since their split over a decade ago. He'd deliberately pushed her out of his mind, focusing all his energy on building his career. Seeing her now, sitting there with those two children, stirred emotions he thought he'd buried long ago. Shock, confusion, and even a flicker of anger bubbled inside him. But what really unnerved him was the sight of the twins. If they were hers, and clearly they were, then why did they look so much like him? Was it truly just a bizarre coincidence? Or was there more to this story than met the eye? Before he could fully process his thoughts, Emily glanced up. Her eyes locked onto his, and for a brief moment neither of them moved. Recognition dawned on her face, followed by a mix of surprise and apprehension. Slowly, she rose from the bench, clutching her purse tightly as though bracing herself for whatever might come next. "Michael," she said softly, breaking the silence. Her voice was hesitant, almost uncertain. He swallowed hard, forcing himself to stay composed. "Emily," he replied, his tone measured. "It's been a long time." "Yes, it has," she agreed, glancing briefly at the children before turning her attention back to him. There was tension in the air, thick enough to cut with a knife. Yet beneath it all, Michael couldn't shake the feeling that something monumental was about to unfold. Whatever it was, he knew it would change everything, for both of them. For now, though, he simply stood there staring at the woman who used to know him better than anyone else in the world. And behind her, the two children continued to play, blissfully unaware of the storm brewing between the adults. The moment Emily spoke his name, Michael felt as though he'd been transported back in time. It was strange how certain voices could trigger memories you thought were long buried. Hearing hers again brought everything rushing back, the laughter, the arguments, the dreams they once shared. Standing there in Central Park, surrounded by the golden hues of autumn, Michael couldn't help but feel like he was reliving fragments of a life he had tried so hard to forget. Emily looked different now. Her hair was shorter than he remembered, styled in a way that suited her matured features. She wore a simple sweater and jeans, far removed from the polished business suits she used to favor when they were together. But her eyes, those warm, hazel eyes, were exactly the same. They still held the same depth, the same ability to make him feel seen in ways no one else ever had. Even after all these years, they still unnerved him. "What are you doing here?" Emily asked, breaking the silence. Her voice was calm, but there was an edge to it, a hint of nervousness that Michael picked up on immediately. "I just needed some fresh air," he replied, gesturing vaguely toward the park. "I work nearby, so I thought I'd take a walk." Emily nodded slowly, her gaze flickering between him and the twins who were now chasing each other around the fountain. For a moment, neither of them said anything. The only sounds were the rustling leaves overhead and the distant chatter of other park-goers. Yet the tension between them was palpable, thick enough to fill the space without words. Finally, Michael mustered the courage to ask the question that had been gnawing at him since he spotted the children. "Are those yours?" he asked, nodding, toward the twins. His tone was casual, but his heart was pounding in his chest. Emily hesitated for a fraction of a second before answering. "Yes," she said softly. "They're mine." She glanced at them fondly, her expression softening as she watched them play. "This is Lily," she added, pointing to the girl, "and this is Jake. They look—" Michael trailed off, unsure how to finish. He wanted to say, happy, because they clearly were. Their laughter was infectious, their energy boundless. But there was something else about them, something deeper that made his throat tighten. "They look like me," he finished quietly, almost under his breath. Emily froze. Her smile faltered, and for a split second, panic flashed across her face. Then, just as quickly, she masked it with a forced laugh. "Don't be silly," she said lightly, though her voice wavered slightly. "They take after my side of the family." Michael didn't respond right away. Instead, he studied her carefully, searching for any sign of dishonesty. Emily had always been a terrible liar. Even when they were kids, she'd blush or avoid eye contact whenever she tried to deceive him. Now, standing here in front of him, she couldn't quite meet his gaze. Her fingers fidgeted with the strap of her purse and her lips pressed into a thin line, a telltale sign that she was hiding something. "Do they know about me?" Michael asked suddenly, surprising even himself with the bluntness of the question. Emily blinked, caught off guard. "About you?" she repeated, stalling for time. "What do you mean?" "I mean, do they know who I am? Do they know they have a father out there somewhere?" He regretted the words as soon as they left his mouth. They sounded harsher than he intended, accusatory even, but he couldn't take them back now. To her credit, Emily didn't flinch. She squared her shoulders, meeting his gaze head-on this time. "No," she said firmly. "They don't know anything about you." Her answer hit him like a punch to the gut. He hadn't expected it to hurt so much, but it did. Deep down, he knew it wasn't fair to blame her. He was the one who walked away after their divorce, focusing solely on his career while leaving their shared history behind. Still, hearing her admit that she'd erased him completely from her life, and, by extension, their children's lives, felt like a betrayal. "Why not?" he demanded, his voice rising despite his effort to stay calm. "Don't you think they deserve to know where they come from?" Don't you think I deserve to know I have kids? It's complicated, Emily shot back, her own voice rising. Now, you weren't exactly eager to stick around after we split up, Michael. You made it clear that your career came first, so forgive me if I didn't think you'd want to be involved. That's not true, he protested, taking a step closer. You never gave me a chance to decide what I wanted. You shut me out. Completely. And what was I supposed to do? She countered, tears welling up in her eyes. Beg you to stay? Force you into a role you didn't want? Is that what you think I should have done? Michael opened his mouth to argue, but no, words came out. The truth was she had a point. After their divorce, he had thrown himself into his work, using it as a distraction from the pain of losing her. He hadn't reached out, hadn't tried to mend things. In his mind, moving on meant cutting ties completely. But now, looking at those two children playing innocently by the fountain, he realized how selfish that decision had been. I didn't know, he said finally, his voice quieter now. I didn't know about them. Emily sighed, running a hand through her hair. I know, she admitted, and I'm sorry. I should have told you, but at the time I thought it was for the best. For the best? He echoed, incredulous. How could keeping something like this from me possibly be for the best? She didn't answer right away. Instead, she turned to look at Lily and Jake, who were now sitting on the edge of the fountain, giggling as they dipped their hands into the water. When she spoke again, her voice was barely above a whisper. Because I was scared, Michael. Scared of ruining your future. Scared of forcing you into something you weren't ready for. I thought I was protecting everyone, including you. Her words hung in the air between them, heavy with unspoken emotion. Michael felt torn between anger and guilt, confusion and longing. All these years he'd assumed he'd never become a father because of his demanding lifestyle. But now, faced with the reality that he already was a father, he didn't know what to feel. For a moment, neither of them said anything. The only sounds were the gentle lapping of water against the fountain and the occasional burst of laughter from the twins. Finally, Emily broke the silence. What do we do now? She asked, her voice trembling slightly. Do you even want to be part of their lives? Michael stared at her, then at the children. They were perfect. Bright-eyed, curious, full of life, and somehow, impossibly, they were his. His kids, his responsibility. Despite everything, he felt a pull toward them, a connection he couldn't explain. Yes, he said finally, his voice steady. I want to be part of their lives. They're my children, Emily. My family. Whatever it takes, I'll figure it out. Emily nodded, relief washing over her face. We'll take it slow, she promised. One step at a time. As they stood there, watching the twins splash water and chase each other, Michael felt a glimmer of hope. The road ahead wouldn't be easy, but maybe, just maybe, they could build something new together, something real. The decision to move forward wasn't made lightly. After their conversation by the fountain, Michael and Emily both knew they had a lot of ground to cover, not just for themselves but for Lily and Jake as well. The weight of the revelation hung heavily in the air, and neither of them could ignore the complexity of what lay ahead. For now, though, they agreed to take things one step at a time. They decided that Michael would meet the twins first, in a casual setting where everyone could feel comfortable. It was a daunting prospect, but Michael was determined to make it work. 2 days later, on a crisp Saturday morning, Michael found himself standing outside a small cafe near Central Park. He had chosen the location because it felt neutral, a place where no one would feel out of their element. Emily arrived shortly after him, holding Lily's hand while Jake trailed behind her, clutching a toy car tightly. Both children looked up at Michael with wide, curious eyes, unsure of who this stranger was or why he was there. Hey, Emily said softly, giving Michael a small smile. Thanks for coming. Of course, Michael replied, his voice steady despite the nervous energy coursing through him. He crouched down slightly so he was closer to the kid's eye level. Hi, there, he said warmly, addressing them directly. I'm Michael, nice to meet you. Lily tilted her head, studying him intently. Are you our friend? She asked innocently. Michael chuckled, glancing at Emily briefly before answering. Well, I'd like to be your friend. How does that sound? Jake frowned, still clutching his toy car. But we don't know you, he said matter-of-factly. That's okay, Michael assured him. We can get to know each other. Friends start somewhere, right? Emily stepped in gently. Michael is someone special, she explained to the twins. He's going to spend some time with us and maybe you'll have fun together. The kids exchanged glances, clearly unsure about the situation. But they didn't protest when Emily suggested they go inside the cafe to grab some snacks. As they settled into a cozy corner booth, Michael did his best to engage them in conversation. He asked about their favorite foods, their hobbies, and even their school activities. At first, their responses were short and hesitant, but as the minutes passed, they began to open up, especially Lily, who proudly showed him a drawing she had made earlier that week. Throughout the meal, Michael couldn't help but marvel at how naturally the twins interacted with each other. Their bond was undeniable, a mirror image of the kind of sibling relationship he'd always imagined having if he'd grown up with brothers or sisters. Watching them laugh and tease each other brought a warmth to his chest that he hadn't felt in years. Yet beneath the surface there was also a sense of loss, a realization of all the moments he'd missed. After finishing their snacks, Emily suggested they take a walk around the park. The weather was perfect, sunny but not too warm, and the kids seemed eager to stretch their legs. As they strolled along the winding paths, Michael noticed how Emily subtly encouraged the twins to include him in their games. When Jake started racing ahead, Emily called out playfully, "Hey, slow down, let Michael catch up." It was a small gesture, but it meant the world to Michael. It showed him that Emily was willing to try, to give him a chance to connect with the children who were in every way that mattered, his own. In return, he did everything he could to win their trust. He joined in their games, chased them during hide-and-seek, and even let Jake teach him how to zoom his toy car across the grass. By the end of the afternoon, the kids were laughing freely, treating Michael less like a stranger and more like an extended family member. As the sun began to set, casting long shadows across the park, Emily suggested heading home. The twins groaned in protest. They weren't ready for the day to end, but eventually agreed when Emily promised they could come back another time. On the drive back to her apartment, Michael sat quietly in the passenger seat, reflecting on everything that had happened. Despite the awkwardness and uncertainty, the day had gone better than he could have hoped. For the first time in years, he felt a sense of purpose beyond his career. These children, their laughter, their curiosity, their boundless energy, were worth fighting for. When they arrived at Emily's building, she turned to Michael before getting out of the car. "Thank you for today," she said sincerely. "I think it meant a lot to them. And to me." "It meant a lot to me too," Michael admitted, meeting her gaze. "I know we've got a long road ahead, but I want you to know, I'm committed to this, to being part of their lives. Of our lives." Emily nodded, a hint of a smile playing on her lips. "I believe you," she said simply. Over the next few weeks, Michael continued to visit regularly. Each outing was a little easier than the last. As the twins grew more comfortable around him, they began asking questions, innocent ones at first, like why he lived in a different house or why they hadn't met him sooner. Michael answered honestly, explaining that sometimes life gets complicated and people make mistakes. He promised them that from now on, things would be different. One evening, after tucking the twins into bed following a particularly fun day at the zoo, Emily joined Michael in the living room. She poured 2 cups of tea and handed one to him before sitting down across from him. "You're doing great," she said, breaking the silence. "They really like you." "I hope so," Michael replied, taking a sip of his tea. "But I know it's going to take time. Trust isn't something you earn overnight." "No, it's not," Emily agreed. "But you're putting in the effort, and that matters, more than you realize." For a moment, neither of them spoke. The quiet between them wasn't uncomfortable, it was reflective, filled with unspoken understanding. Both of them carried guilt and regret from the past, but they were also beginning to see the possibility of redemption. Together, they were laying the foundation for something new, something stronger than either of them had dared to imagine. As Michael left that night, he couldn't shake the feeling that this was only the beginning. There would be challenges ahead, moments of doubt and frustration, but for the first time in years he felt hopeful. Hopeful for the future, for Lily, for Jake, for Emily, and yes, even for himself. And as he drove home under the starlit sky, Michael allowed himself to dream again. Not of profit margins or boardroom victories, but of family dinners, bedtime stories, and lazy Sunday mornings. Dreams he thought he'd lost forever were slowly coming back to life, one tentative step at a time. As weeks turned into months, Michael's presence in Lily and Jake's lives became more consistent. What started as occasional visits evolved into weekend outings, impromptu dinners, and even bedtime stories when Emily needed a helping hand. Slowly but surely the twins began to accept him, not just as a visitor or a friend, but as someone who genuinely cared about them. Their laughter filled his days, and their curiosity kept him on his toes. Yet, despite the progress they were making, there was still an unspoken barrier between them, a gap that stemmed from the unanswered questions lingering in the air. One rainy Saturday afternoon, Michael found himself sitting in Emily's cozy living room while the kids played quietly upstairs. The rhythmic patter of rain against the windows created a soothing backdrop, but the mood between Michael and Emily was anything but relaxed. They had been tiptoeing around certain topics for months now, avoiding the deeper conversations that needed to happen. Today, however, Michael decided it was time to confront the elephant in the room. "Emily," he began, setting down his coffee mug on the wooden table, "there's something I need to ask you." She looked up from her book, her expression wary. "What is it?" He hesitated, choosing his words carefully. "It's about why you didn't tell me about Lily and Jake sooner. I've thought about it a lot, and I can't stop wondering, was it really because you thought I wouldn't want to be involved? Or was there something else?" Emily sighed deeply, closing her book and placing it beside her. For a moment, she stared out the window, watching the raindrops slide down the glass. When she finally spoke, her voice was soft but heavy with emotion. "I wish it were that simple," she admitted. "But the truth is, it wasn't just about protecting you or even myself. It was about protecting them." Michael frowned, leaning forward slightly. "Protecting them? From what?" Her gaze shifted back to him, and he could see the conflict in her eyes. "From uncertainty," she explained. "From disappointment. From the possibility that you might walk away again. Back then, after the divorce, you were so focused on your career. You barely had time for yourself, let alone a family. I didn't know if you'd ever be ready to take on the responsibility of being a father." "But you should have given me the chance to decide," Michael interjected, his frustration bubbling to the surface. "You made that decision for me without even asking." "I know," Emily said quickly, holding up a hand to stop him. "And I regret it every single day. But at the time, I truly believed I was doing the right thing, for everyone, including you." Michael shook his head, running a hand through his hair. "You don't understand. This isn't just about me, it's about them too. Don't you think they deserve to know where they came from? To know who their father is?" "Yes, of course they did," Emily replied, her voice cracking slightly. "But I was scared, Michael. Scared of how things would change if I told you. Scared of what might happen if you rejected them, or worse, if you tried to step in and disrupt the life we'd built together. I wanted to shield them from any potential pain." Her words hit him like a punch to the gut. He hadn't considered the fear and vulnerability she must have felt all those years ago. In his mind, he had been the one wronged, the one kept in the dark. But now, hearing her perspective, he realized that her silence hadn't been born out of malice. It had been born out of love. Love for her children, and perhaps, in some twisted way, for him too. "You're right," Michael said finally, his tone softer now. "I get it. You were trying to protect them. But keeping this from me, It wasn't fair to anyone. Not to me, not to you, and certainly not to them. I know, Emily whispered, tears spilling down her cheeks. And I'll never forgive myself for it. But I'm here now, Michael. We're both here, and we have a chance to make things right. For them. The room fell silent except for the sound of the rain outside. Michael took a deep breath, letting her words sink in. He knew she was right. They couldn't change the past, no matter how much they wished they could. All they could do was focus on the present and work toward building a better future for Lily and Jake. A sudden burst of giggles from upstairs broke the tension. Both Michael and Emily glanced toward the staircase, where the twins were now engaged in a lively game of hide-and-seek. Even through the closed door, their joy was infectious, filling the house with warmth and light. They're amazing, Michael said softly, smiling despite the heaviness of their conversation. Smart, funny, full of energy. I can't believe they're mine. They are, Emily confirmed, wiping her tears with the back of her hand. And they're lucky to have you in their lives now. Even if it's late, it's not too late. Michael nodded, feeling a renewed sense of determination. We'll figure this out together, he promised. Whatever it takes, I'll be there for them. For all of you. Emily smiled faintly, gratitude shining in her eyes. Thank you, she murmured. That means more than you know. Later that evening, after the storm had passed and the sky cleared, Michael stayed behind to help put the kids to bed. As he tucked Lily under her blanket, she looked up at him with sleepy eyes. Will you come back tomorrow? She asked innocently. Of course, Michael replied, brushing a strand of hair from her face. I'll always come back. Satisfied with his answer, she yawned and closed her eyes, drifting off to sleep almost instantly. Across the hall, Jake was already snoring softly, his toy car clutched tightly in his hand. Standing there in the dimly lit bedroom, Michael felt a wave of emotions wash over him: pride, guilt, hope, and above all, love. He returned to the living room where Emily was tidying up. She looked up at him, her expression thoughtful. They trust you now, she said. It took time, but they do. I won't let them down, Michael vowed, his voice steady. Not again. Emily nodded, believing him. For the first time in years, she allowed herself to imagine a future where they weren't just co-parents, but partners in raising their children. Together they had faced the hidden truths of their past, and though the scars remained, they were healing. With each passing day, they were becoming stronger, not just individually, but as a family. Outside, the clouds parted, revealing a sliver of moonlight that bathed the world in silver. It was a reminder that even after the darkest storms, there is always light waiting to shine through. And for Michael, Emily, Lily, and Jake, that light was only beginning to grow brighter. The weeks that followed were a whirlwind of emotions for Michael, Emily, and the twins. While Lily and Jake continued to grow more comfortable around Michael, the weight of the hidden truth still loomed over them all. It wasn't just about building trust. It was about navigating the complexities of their newfound family dynamic. For Michael, every interaction with the kids felt like walking on eggshells. He wanted to be present, to show them he cared, but he also didn't want to overstep or disrupt the life they already had with Emily. It was a delicate balance, one that required patience, understanding, and constant communication. Emily, too, was grappling with her own feelings. On one hand, she was relieved that Michael had stepped into their lives so willingly. His willingness to connect with the twins filled her with hope that their fractured past could be mended. But on the other hand, she couldn't shake the guilt of keeping such a monumental secret from him for so long. Every time she saw the way Michael looked at Lily and Jake, with pride, love, and a touch of sadness, she wondered if she'd done the right thing by waiting this long to tell him. One Friday evening, as the sun dipped below the horizon and painted the sky in shades of orange and pink, Michael arrived at Emily's apartment with a small duffel bag slung over his shoulder. It was his turn to stay overnight, a new arrangement they had agreed upon to give the twins more quality time with him. Though it had taken some convincing, and reassurance on Michael's part, Emily finally relented, trusting that he would handle the responsibility well. "Hi, Dad," Lily exclaimed cheerfully as she opened the door, her face lighting up at the sight of him. The word Dad caught Michael off guard. It was the first time either of the twins had called him that, and hearing it sent a rush of warmth and fear through his chest. He knelt down to her level, smiling softly. "Hey there, kiddo," he said, ruffling her hair. "How was school today?" "It was fun," she replied enthusiastically, launching into a detailed account of her day while tugging him. Inside, Jake trailed behind her, clutching his ever-present toy car, though he offered Michael a shy smile as they passed. Michael exchanged a glance with Emily, who stood in the kitchen stirring a pot of soup. She raised an eyebrow at him, silently asking if he was ready for what lay ahead. He gave her a confident nod, though inside he felt anything but certain. Being called Dad came with expectations he wasn't sure he was fully prepared to meet. After dinner, which consisted of laughter-filled conversations and Jake accidentally spilling milk all over the table, Michael helped clean up while Emily tucked the kids into bed. When she returned to the living room, she found him sitting on the couch staring out the window at the darkening cityscape. "You okay?" she asked gently, sitting beside him. He sighed, turning to face her. "I don't know," he admitted. "It's just, everything feels overwhelming sometimes. I mean, look at me. I'm trying my best, but I keep wondering if it's enough. If I'm enough." Emily placed a reassuring hand on his arm. "You're doing great, Michael. The fact that you're even here, putting in the effort, that says more than you realize." "But what if I mess up?" he pressed, his voice tinged with anxiety. "What if I say or do something wrong? What if they get hurt because of me?" "They won't," Emily said firmly. "Kids are resilient, Michael. And besides, you're not alone in this. We're figuring it out together, remember?" Her words brought him some comfort, but the doubts lingered. Parenthood wasn't something he'd planned for, at least not like this. He had spent most of his adult life climbing the corporate ladder, prioritizing work over relationships. Now, suddenly, he was thrust into a role he hadn't anticipated, one that demanded more emotional investment than any business deal ever could. The next morning, Michael woke early to find Lily and Jake already awake, playing quietly in the living room. They greeted him with wide smiles, clearly excited to spend another day with him. After breakfast, they headed to a nearby park, where Michael taught them how to fly kites, a childhood hobby he hadn't thought about in years. Watching their faces light up as the colorful kites soared high above them filled him with a sense of accomplishment he hadn't felt in ages. But later that afternoon, as they returned home, reality struck again. Lily tripped on the sidewalk, scraping her knee badly. She cried out in pain, tears streaming down her cheeks as blood trickled from the wound. Michael froze momentarily, unsure of what to do. Should he pick her up? Comfort her? Call Emily? Before he could act, Jake ran to his sister's side, pulling out a bandage from his pocket. "Don't worry, Lily," he said bravely. "I've got this." Michael watched in awe as Jake carefully cleaned the scrape and applied the bandage, all while comforting his sister. It was a moment of pure sibling solidarity, one that reminded Michael of how strong and independent his children were. Still, he couldn't help but feel a pang of guilt for not stepping in sooner. When Emily arrived home that evening, she noticed the bandage on Lily's knee immediately. "What happened?" she asked, kneeling down to examine it. "I fell," Lily explained matter-of-factly, pointing at Michael. "But Daddy helped me." Michael blinked, surprised by the lie. He opened his mouth to correct her, but Emily cut him off with a knowing smile. "Well, good job, Daddy," she teased, winking at him before turning back to Lily. "Does it hurt much?" "Nope," Lily chirped, hopping around to prove her point. "Jake fixed it and Daddy made sure I was okay." Michael felt a lump rise in his throat. Despite his initial hesitation, the twins had included him in their story, in their lives. They had given him a place, however small, in their world. And for the first time, he realized that maybe being a parent wasn't about perfection. It was about showing up even when you didn't have all the answers. Over the next few days, Michael threw himself into learning everything he could about raising kids. He read parenting books, watched online tutorials, and even consulted friends who were parents themselves. Each piece of advice helped him gain confidence, but nothing compared to the lessons he learned directly from Lily and Jake. Their resilience, curiosity, and unconditional love taught him more than any book ever could. By the end of the week, Michael felt a shift, not just within himself but in the way the twins interacted with him. They no longer hesitated to hold his hand or ask for his help. They laughed freely in his presence and sought his approval in ways that made his heart swell with pride. Even Emily noticed the change. "They really trust you now," she said one evening as they sat on the porch watching the sunset. "It's beautiful to see." "It's scary too," Michael admitted. "I don't want to let them down." "You won't," Emily assured him. "Not as long as you keep showing up, that's all they need." As the stars began to twinkle in the night sky, Michael allowed himself to breathe deeply for the first time in months. The road ahead wouldn't always be smooth, he knew that. There would still be challenges, moments of doubt, and perhaps even setbacks. But for now, he was content. Content knowing that he was exactly where he was meant to be. With his children, his ex-wife, and a future full of possibilities stretching out before them. Months turned into a year, and the fragile threads of connection between Michael, Emily, Lily, and Jake began to weave themselves into something stronger. What had started as tentative steps toward reconciliation evolved into a new rhythm, a shared life that felt both familiar and fresh. For Michael, every day was a lesson in balancing his role as a father with the demands of his career. At first it seemed impossible to juggle board meetings and bedtime stories, but slowly, he learned how to prioritize what truly mattered. The twins became his anchor, pulling him away from the relentless pursuit of success and grounding him in moments of pure joy. Emily noticed the change in him too. Gone was the man who once defined himself solely by his achievements. In his place stood someone softer, more patient, and deeply invested in the people around him. She often caught glimpses of this new Michael during their weekend outings, whether it was when he helped Jake build a sandcastle at the beach or when he patiently listened to Lily's endless stories about her school adventures. It wasn't just the kids who were growing. Michael was transforming right alongside them. The turning point came one crisp winter morning when Michael woke up early to prepare for a rare family trip to the mountains. It was Emily's idea, a chance for all of them to spend time together, away from the distractions of city life. As they packed the car with blankets, snacks, and toys, Michael couldn't help but feel a sense of anticipation. This wasn't just another outing. It was an opportunity to create memories that would last a lifetime. The drive to the cabin was filled with laughter and sing-alongs to children's songs on the radio. Lily sat in the back seat, her nose pressed against the window as she pointed out snow-covered trees and frozen lakes. Jake, meanwhile, regaled everyone with tales of imaginary adventures involving his toy car, which he claimed could drive through anything. Michael glanced at Emily in the rearview mirror, sharing a silent smile. Moments like these made all the struggles worth it. When they arrived at the cozy log cabin nestled deep in the woods, the kids erupted into excited cheers. They spent the afternoon sledding down snowy hills, building snowmen, and sipping hot chocolate by the fireplace. That evening, as the fire crackled softly in the hearth, Michael gathered Lily and Jake close for their nightly ritual, a bedtime story. But tonight, instead of reading from a book, he decided to share something personal. "Once upon a time," he began, his voice warm and steady, "there was a man who worked very hard every day. He thought that if he kept working, he'd find happiness. But no matter how much money he made or how many awards he won, he still felt empty." Lily and Jake leaned forward, captivated by his words. "Why was he sad?" Lily asked, her brow furrowed in concern. "He didn't know," Michael continued. "Not until one day when he met two amazing kids who taught him what really matters in life. They showed him that happiness isn't about having the biggest house or the fanciest car. It's about being with the people you love." Jake tilted his head thoughtfully. "Did the man figure it out?" Michael smiled, brushing a strand of hair from Lily's face. Yes, he did. And now he tries his best to be the kind of person those kids deserve. Not because he has to, but because he wants to. For a moment, the room was quiet except for the crackling fire. Then Lily reached out and hugged him tightly. "I'm glad you're our daddy," she whispered, her voice muffled against his chest. Tears pricked at the corners of Michael's eyes, but he blinked them away, pulling both kids into a tight embrace. "I'm glad I'm your daddy too," he murmured, his voice thick with emotion. The next morning, as sunlight streamed through the frosty windows, Emily found Michael outside, staring out at the snow-covered landscape. She approached him, quietly, wrapping a scarf around her neck to ward off the chill. "You look happy," she observed, standing beside him. "I am," he replied without hesitation. Us, it feels real now, like we're finally getting it right." Emily nodded, following his gaze. "It hasn't been easy, has it? But we've come so far." "We have," Michael agreed. "And I owe a lot of that to you. Without your support, I don't think I'd have been able to do this." She smiled faintly, nudging him playfully. "Don't sell yourself short. You've earned this, Michael. Every bit of it." Their conversation was interrupted by the sound of giggles as Lily and Jake burst out of the cabin, armed with snowballs. "Dad! Mom!" Jake shouted, pelting Michael with a perfectly aimed missile. "Snowball fight!" Without missing a beat, Michael scooped up a handful of snow and retaliated, sending the kids squealing with delight. Even Emily joined in, laughing as they chased each other around the yard. For a brief moment, the weight of their past faded away, replaced by the simple joy of being together. Later that evening, as they sat around the table playing board games, Michael realized something profound. Parenthood wasn't about perfection. It was about showing up, even when you didn't feel ready. It was about embracing imperfections and learning from mistakes. Most importantly, it was about creating a foundation of love and trust that would carry them through whatever challenges lay ahead. As the days passed and the family returned to their normal routines, Michael made a conscious effort to stay present. He cut back on late-night work calls, prioritizing evenings with the twins instead. He attended parent-teacher conferences, cheered at soccer games, and even volunteered for class field trips. Each small action reinforced his commitment, not just to Lily and Jake, but to the family they were rebuilding together. One evening, as he tucked the kids into bed, Lily looked up at him with serious eyes. "Daddy, will you always be here?" Michael paused, kneeling beside her bed. "Always," he promised, placing a gentle kiss on her forehead. "No matter what." Her sleepy smile was all the reassurance he needed. Across the hall, Jake echoed the sentiment as Michael tucked him in. "Good night, Dad," he said softly, clutching his toy car. "Good night, buddy," Michael replied, turning off the light. Back in the living room, Emily waited for him, a steaming cup of tea in hand. "You're doing great, you know," she said, handing him the mug. "They adore you." "I adore them too," Michael admitted, sinking onto the couch beside her. "And I owe you a lot for giving me this second chance." Emily shook her head, smiling. "We're a team now. Whatever happens, we'll face it together." As they sat there in comfortable silence, watching the flames dance in the fireplace, Michael felt a profound sense of gratitude. Life hadn't turned out the way he'd planned, but perhaps that was a good thing. Through the twists and turns, he had discovered something far greater than success or achievement: a family. Imperfect, messy, and utterly beautiful. Outside, the stars twinkled brightly against the velvet sky, casting a soft glow over the snow-covered world. Inside, warmth radiated from the hearts of four people who had once been strangers but were, now bound together by love. Together, they had built something extraordinary, a new beginning forged from the ashes of their past. And as long as they stayed united, there was nothing they couldn't overcome.